Hey, sugar honey dumplings. It's your favorite hood healer. It's your favorite hood high priestess. It's your favorite motivational dominatrix. It's your favorite auntie, captain, goddess, king, LadySpeech in the place to be. And I want to welcome you back to my channel. You could be anywhere in the world, absolutely, positively anywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, you are somewhere in the world. And you're also sharing a little bit of time and a little bit of space with me. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. If you like what I'm doing, if you like what you see, if you're feeling any of this, and if you're feeling all of me, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit that notifications bell so you can keep up with all of my shenanigans and happenings and goings-ons and things. Now we got a very serious video to get into today. So let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Currently on my timeline, I'm seeing a conversation happening with Black people where we are speaking about and folks are talking about their experiences with extremely highly abusive Black single mothers. Along this spectrum of conversation, there's a lot of really good points being made. Along the spectrum of conversation, I'm seeing a lot of places where misogyny and misogynoir is showing up. I'm not here to focus in or hone in on those parts of the conversation. I do want to bring up a part of the conversation that I'm not hearing, which I believe is quite foundational to this conversation when it comes to the abusiveness of Black mothers. Are y'all ready to talk about how many Black girls, how many Black women are forced into motherhood against their will, which triggers a post-traumatic slavery syndrome response, which is at the seat and the core of a lot of their abuse and hatred of the children that they are forced to bear? And let me be clear, as someone who has been severely abused and neglected by their mother and their father, I'm offering no excuses to these abusive mothers. However, this conversation is nuanced, and I'm providing a bit of that. A big reason why a lot of Black mothers are so abusive to their children is because the world is so abusive to them, and they are oftentimes left alone to fend for the children that they have been shamed into keeping, they have been forced into keeping, and they are not being supported while they are keeping them. Are y'all ready to talk about how some of these Black single mothers who are abusive to their children were impregnated at young ages by abusive men who were 1, 2, 3 times older than them, and then left these young ass girls in the position of primary parent for children that they didn't want, that they just impregnated these young girls with to entrap them? Are we ready to have that conversation or not? Again, I'm not offering no excuses, but we're going to really need to look at toxic Christianity, white supremacy, and toxic patriarchy at the root of a lot of this shit. And to the non-Black people who are listening to this video, I'm speaking directly to other Black people. This ain't for you to weigh in on. All right, my sugar honey dumplings, if you made it to this part of the video, gold star for you. Before we take a deep dive into this very heavy and serious subject, I want to take a moment to do a little bit of house cleaning, okay? So number 1, trigger warning. If you made it to this part of the video, you've already seen the beginning of this video, which alerted you to the heaviness and the depth of the subject that we're about to get into. This is your official trigger warning. We're only going to get deeper into this subject from here. So if you feel like you're going to get triggered when we speak about this very heavy subject, do not feel bad about clicking off of the video and coming back to it or never revisiting it again. I really want you to take care of yourself. Your safety and your comfort should be your priority. So even though I'm about to break you off with some really good information and get deep into this subject, Your safety is what matters the most, okay? Do not force yourself to sit through this content just because you like me. Do not force yourself to sit through this content just because I make you feel good. If it's triggering you and causing certain emotions to come up inside of you, please take care of yourself. That's number one. Number two, this is for my non-Black people. So I welcome everyone who feels drawn and called to this video to watch this video. In this video, I'm speaking directly to the Black community. If you are a part of the Black community, and this is African American, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latinx, Blasian, Afro-Indigenous, if you are Black, I welcome you to weigh in the comments on this conversation and with this conversation. I welcome you to share this in your circles and to encourage other Black people to weigh in on this conversation and have this conversation. If you are non-Black, here is how you can engage with this video. You can watch this video. If something that I say connects and resonates with your story, you are allowed to speak to your history, your story in the comments. If you are non-Black, Black people, the Black community, we do not need you to weigh in with your 2 cents on this very serious subject that affects us, all right? If you are non-Black and this information connects with you and you resonate with this information, feel free to share this with your circles. Feel free to share this with anybody you feel is relevant. Feel free to share this to whoever, with whatever. But there is a certain way that you and your people need to engage in this conversation. And that is from your own personal perspective. I do not need you. I don't need your opinion, and none of us need your opinion about Black single mothers. We don't need your opinion about the state of Black men. We don't need your opinion about the state of Black children. And we don't need your opinion about what it feels like to be descendants of the formerly enslaved. We don't need any of that information. If you are non-Black, so if you are white, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, do not weigh in to this conversation as if you're contributing something to the Black community. This conversation is for us. This conversation is by us. This conversation is about us. Now, I understand that a lot of you will resonate with some of the things that I say, because some of the things that I say are relatable to people outside of the Black community, and I'm absolutely all right with that. Again, you can weigh in about your personal experience, but if you're not Black, I don't need you to weigh in on what your opinion is in regards to us. Got it? Got it. Number 3, let's talk about what inspired this video. So 2 things actually inspired this video. A couple months ago, I got a hold of a series of videos on TikTok, where a lot of Black women, a lot of Black teens, a lot of Black femmes, and a lot of Black girls were speaking about the mother wound that they have with their Black mother. So encountering all of those videos is actually what put me in the mind state to create a series of videos around this subject, okay? So this happened around about, I would say, May and June. I started seeing a bunch of these videos on TikTok, and I started slowly doing my research and just thinking and taking notes around what I wanted to say when it came to this subject. The thing that really pushed me into making this video is a situation, once again, on TikTok. It's a situation involving someone who goes by the name of the situational therapist. Recently, he had a video that went viral. And in the video, he spoke to being raised by a Black single mom who was very, very, very abusive. The reason why this video prompted me to create this video and start this series is because of 2 things. Number 1, I think he had a most valid point. He had a very valid point. He really spoke to the pain of being raised by a single Black mother who ended up abusing and punishing him and taking out a lot of her grief, a lot of her dysfunction out on him. His story was painful to hear. It was a story that resonated with a lot of Black men, with a lot of Black women, and it's a story that a lot of us who've grown up around mentally ill or dysfunctional Black mothers, it's a story we know well. So that prompted me. The other part of what that video exposed, though, was his internalized misogynoir and his internalized hatred towards Black women. And the way he framed that video opened up a space of dialogue where men, especially Black men raised by single Black mothers, proceeded to just hate Black women. The space that was created by the way he spoke to his issue, he created a space where Black men were able to come together and vent about their issues and speak to their trauma and their pain, but he also very much cultivated a space where Black men shitted on Black women, basically. In his comment section, there was a lot of misogynoir. There was a lot of men who there was a lot of Black men who justified the ill treatment of Black women because of their internalized misogyny, their internalized hatred, their internalized misogynoir, their internalized anti-Blackness, and their lack of healing. When I saw this situation go down, I was actually really happy because it's a conversation that needs to be had in our community. The video that I posted before we got into this video, though, spoke to what I saw was missing in his commentary and in a lot of people's commentary around this subject. I believe that this subject is an important one to speak on, but it also contains a lot of nuances. And if we're going to get to the bottom of our healing in regards to subjects like this, then we need to be able to have a conversation that includes the nuances. It was important for me to make the video that you saw at the beginning of this video to provide that nuance, and it's important for me to make this video to further explain that nuance. In this video today, it's the first in this series. I have no idea what this series is going to be called, but it's the first in this series, and so I'm going to spend most of this video really breaking down what I meant in that first video and expanding on those subjects, okay? Now that all that house cleaning is done, let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we're all here for. All right, sugar honey dumplings, let's get into it. I got my notes and I'm all the way ready. All right, sugar honey dumplings, let's talk about the abusiveness of some Black single mothers. First and foremost, I want to establish two things. I do not offer any excuses to abusive parents. I myself am a survivor, okay? So the first thing I'm saying is, number one, I don't offer any excuses for abusive parents. And number two, I myself am a survivor of a neglectful, abusive mother and a neglectful, abusive father. So I know what it is to experience two parents, both parents, who completely dropped the ball on me, okay? My parents were neglectful and they were abusive in two different forms and fashions, all right? So I don't offer any excuses towards any parent that is abusive. I don't. However, there is explanation. And if we're going to break generational cycles, if we're going to stop these things from happening to future generations, we're gonna need to look at the explanations. We're gonna need to dissect them. We're gonna need to get to the root of the problem. Because trust me, the abusiveness of Black mothers did not start with them. Let's establish a timeline. Slavery ended about 160, I believe, 160 years ago. Black people have been out of enslavement less than half the time we were enslaved. And I'm speaking to the timeline as it relates to the United States of America, all right? So that's what I want to mention, okay? Slavery literally was two 70-year-old, two 80-year-old people who lived back to back, okay? That's 2 generations, that's it. We like to think that slavery was 400 years ago, 300 years ago, 200 years ago. It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't that long ago. And Black people still feel the effects of enslavement. Science has recently affirmed a very ancient and ancestral knowledge that a lot of indigenous people have known for centuries, which is we carry the memories, the trauma of our ancestors in our blood, in our DNA, in our bones. We have a DNA memory of the trauma of our ancestors that goes back at least 7 generations. I very much feel and am affected by the atrocities that happened to my ancestors. That memory is in my DNA. Why is this important to mention? Because this plays into something that for years I called post-traumatic slavery disorder. Some people call it post-traumatic slavery syndrome. We all know what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD usually occurs in someone who's experienced an awful lot of trauma. And when that trauma is done, they are still traumatized by what happened to them. The trauma was so severe that there is post-stress that is associated with that trauma. The memories of that trauma continue to ripple, all right? That's what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? Post-traumatic slavery disorder is in that same space. It is literally, what it is the descendants of the enslaved feeling the effects of the enslavement of their ancestors because the level of enslavement was so horrific and torturous. Every descendant of the enslaved has this. We all deal with post-traumatic slavery syndrome, post-traumatic slavery disorder at some level. Some of us deal with that at a greater level, some of us deal with it at a lower level, but we all deal with it. Some of us are looking at it, we know exactly what it is, we have the vocabulary around it, we do our decolonizing, we do our re-indigenizing around it, we do our healing around it. A lot of us don't. We don't have the vocabulary for it. We have no idea what this is. We have no idea that we're affected by it. Whether you're working on it or not, whether you know it's there or not, if you are a descendant of the formerly enslaved, you are dealing with post-traumatic slavery syndrome, post-traumatic slavery disorder. This is important and this is foundational. If we're going to understand the abuse that Black women, some Black women, hand out to their children, we have to understand the story, okay? When we think about the life of the formerly enslaved women had no control over their womb. From the moment you were able to have kids to the moment you weren't able to have kids, you were expected to have children. You were bred out. You were given to certain people to literally be bred like chattel, okay? Whether you wanted kids or not, whether you wanted to be pregnant or not, you were a commodity and your womb was used to beget more commodities. You were currency, all right? This memory is very alive in us. This memory is very alive in us, okay? I also want to mention for foundational information, gynecology in America and gynecology as we know it was founded by, in America, it was founded by J. Marion Sims. He was an integral doctor that is credited with the beginning of the study of gynecology. What a lot of people don't know is that J. Marion Sims, he experimented on the bodies of Black women and girls with no anesthesia. He literally cut them open to study our bodies. Because of the racist notion, Black people don't feel pain, or we can't feel pain as deeply as other people, there was no care, there was no comfort, there was no anesthesia, there was no mercy, there was no grace offered up to the women that he experimented on. This memory is alive and well. In the video, I spoke about the fact, and I asked us the question, are we ready to speak about how many young girls and women, Black girls and women, are forced into motherhood? One of the big factors of one of the biggest reasons why a lot of Black girls and women who become mothers, some of them, again, not all Black mothers are abusive. Not all mothers are abusive. Not all Black mothers are abusive. But we're speaking to some Black mothers who are abusive. A big factor, a big reason why some of these Black mothers are abusive is because they were impregnated at young ages by men 2, 3, 4, 5 times their senior. They were impregnated, and in a lot of cases, they were abused by these men. Children. When I posted that original first clip, that video on TikTok, if you go to my TikTok page right now and you look up under that video, what you're going to find is story after story after story after story after story after story after story of Black people speaking to how their mothers were forced into motherhood at 15, how their grandmothers were forced into motherhood at 18, how people were made to marry their violators, the people who violated them and got them pregnant. You will find story after story of women being forced into motherhood. How do you force someone into motherhood? Well, the influence of toxic Christianity. When you are taught, and actually toxic organized religion, because Christianity isn't the only one that's guilty of this. When you are taught by a young age from your religion that God has deemed you as a feminine female person, only good enough to have babies, that your only purpose is to raise children, and that any child, whether it is begotten onto you by force or not, takes precedence over your life, that is being forced into motherhood. Not having the access for proper birth control, being told that you're not allowed to have it, also living in a space where you just don't have access to it due to environmental racism, medical racism, and anti-Blackness, that's another way you force women to be mothers. A big factor why some single Black mothers are so abusive is because they were abused children who were forced to be mothers before they became women, before they became people. I'm offering these women no excuses. I'm offering them no excuses, but there is explanation. How in the hell can you expect an abused child to raise a healthy child? Let's talk about some more contributing factors. Let's talk about the lack of support for Black motherhood. Postpartum depression is a thing. And the group that gets served the least in that space is Black women. Lack of support in the mental health front. Black women are underserved in the mental health department. There is not enough therapists for us. And it's not just about having a general therapist, it's about having a culturally competent therapist for us. A lot of us do not have access to comprehensive, good mental health before we get pregnant. The resources get very thin when you get pregnant. There is a saying that I heard someone say last year, and it said, what cops are to Black men, the medical industry is to Black women. And the point that that statement is making, the way Black men are consistently hunted down by the cops and murdered, Black women lose our lives at the same rate, if not more, when we deal in the medical industrial space. Lack of support. So going into pregnancy, a lot of Black women already might be experiencing mental health issues that were undiagnosed or left untreated. Let's go back to that medical racism thing. Do you remember the opiate crisis? We now see that the opiate crisis is rampant in white America. And it's rampant in white America because of racism. In the 90s, when Oxycontin and all of those really big name, drugs and pills came out, literally due to racism, doctors would not prescribe it to black people because they believed that we were all drug addicts, or we don't feel pain as deeply as other races. So because of that, they drugged everybody else up, mainly the white people, and they didn't drug us up, okay? That is you can do your research on that. There's videos on that on YouTube. You can look that up, okay? So I put that example out there to say medical racism very much exists, and we can see it. We can see it, all right? So we can see it as a whole. In that example, it is even worse when it comes to black women and their physical health, their mental health, and their emotional health. Let's talk about this lack of support when women are having their babies. Did you know that in America, we are considered a first world country, and black women have the highest maternal death rate when we go to the hospitals to have our babies? So this plays into the lack of support. So not only and I know so many black women who went to the hospital to have a baby and had a near-death experience. I myself had to step in and threaten to sue the hospital where my favorite cousin had her child because they were grossly mistreating her. 24 hours after a hysterectomy, they were pushing her body beyond limits that were literally inhumane. My cousin had to deal with almost dying several times after she had her baby. And it was literally due to the lack of support and the fact that they did not pay attention to her and value her life. So let's backtrack and put this into the big picture. What this means is a lot of black women are going into the hospital having near-death experiences. If they end up surviving and being able to leave the hospital with their baby, oftentimes they are mistreated during their visit. They're not paid attention to, their needs aren't being met, and they're not being cherished, taken care of. Their mental health isn't being attended to. They're not giving proper attention when it comes to lactation consultants, all the things all around. Black women are dealing with life and death experiences in the hospital, then they're expected to carry it on their own. Lack of support. We already spoke about the fact that there is not a lot of support for black women when it comes in the mental health space. So you have these black women who might have gone into the hospital to have their baby, already experiencing mental health issues. They have the baby, it wreaks havoc. Having a baby literally wreaks havoc on your brain, and it wreaks havoc in your body. The rush of hormones, leaving all the hormones, you ain't settled for more than a couple months. And black women are notoriously not helped during that very precarious space. So you have a mother who got pregnant, lack of resources, not helped, potentially went a little bit even more crazy during the pregnancy due to the hormones, and no support. I'm not offering any mother any excuse for abusing her child, but I can see how somebody gets there. I'm not offering anybody any excuses, but there is an explanation. There is nuance to this conversation. I'm here to provide it. You can't expect someone who's mentally ill and has no support to be Claire Huxtable. You can't. You can't. Let's talk about toxic Christianity, toxic organized religion, and how this reinforces this idea of forced marriage, of forced motherhood, not marriage. When I put that video up, someone under the comments said, what does Christianity have to do with it? Simple. I explained it a little bit in the beginning, and we're going to revisit that right now. When organized religion tells a woman that she has no autonomy over her body, that she is in complete submission to everyone else around her, when she has no control over her decisions, the decisions that she makes, when Christianity constantly tells her, feeds her, this idea that her life does not matter, that her only purpose is to be a mother, that's coerced, that's indoctrinated, that's forced motherhood. When organized religion doesn't leave room for a young lady, for a young woman to make mistakes and then to be able to be embraced, to be loved afterwards. Organized religion tells these children who get pregnant, well, if you were old enough to have the baby, to have sex, you're old enough to have the baby. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Let's talk about the other way that organized toxic religion, not all organized religion, but organized toxic religion. Let's talk about the other ways that they reinforce this. It's when in these spaces, young ladies are expected to marry their violators. They're expected to, when they're expected to be with men that they don't like, just because a baby got created. These situations force women into situations where they are not loved, where they are being abused, where they are just an object to be owned. If you have no power, if you have no control, if you don't feel like you have a voice, if you have no control over your life, but you have control over a little human, and if you don't have any proper support, any proper mental health around that, who's gonna catch the brunt of your frustration? The only thing you have power over, which is your child. So many of these women are abusive to their kids because they were abused by parents. They were spiritually abused by the organized religion. They were abused by a lot of your fathers. So many women are abusive to their kids because they never wanted children, and they were not allowed because of their society, because of their family, because of their religion. They were never allowed to concretely declare that and live that truth. Again, I'm not offering any excuses. I should not have been abused by my mother. I should not have been abused by my father. None of us should have been abused. None of us should have been abused. It's not our fault. The fault lies on our parents. It's not our fault. But in this moment, I need us to check into our healing so we can understand the reasons why. My mother didn't want me. My mother wanted the idea of me, but she didn't really want me. My mother was told, because she was raised Jehovah's Witness, that her duty when she became of age was to get married and start a family. Her duty, her value was in being a wife and a mother. And my mom, bless her heart, I'm part of the Dead Mothers Club, by the way. She's on the other side. She's an ancestor. My mother, bless her heart, tried hard in the beginning. She tried as hard as she could. She did the religion. She did everything right. She found my father. She got married, even though her parents not like my dad. My dad is evil. But she found him and she got married. And one of the first things she did was try her hardest to get pregnant. My mom tried her hardest to get pregnant because that's what her mother told her. That's what she should do. My mom tried her hardest to get pregnant because everybody around her told her that's what she should do. My mother worked so hard to get pregnant because her religion told her that her salvation was in being a wife and a mother. But when it came down to it, that's not who my mom was. My mom wasn't a mother. And she truly didn't want the kid. She wanted the baby. She wanted the baby, and she wanted the baby so everybody could shut up. And then she had the baby. My mother stayed with my dad, who abused her. My mother got pregnant a few times, and my dad abused those children out of her. My aunt, I only found out like, when was this? I found out like, this had to be 6 years ago. I found out that the only reason why I exist, this was 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. The only reason why I exist is because my dad was in the middle of abusing my mom into losing my pregnancy. And the only reason why I exist is because his brother was abusing my aunt, and my aunt pulled out a piece on him and pulled out a piece on my uncle, shot at him and let him know and left him. That was, I guess, her final time of leaving him and being like, I'm done, I'm not gonna take your abuse anymore. My uncle was even worse with the physical abuse to my aunt. So she pulled out on him, let him know I'm not doing that, and then she went over to my dad's house and went to him and basically threatened him and said, let your wife have this baby. Let her exist in peace and have this baby. If you do not let her have this baby in peace, I'm gonna mess your behind up. Your ass is grass, basically. The only reason why I'm here is because my grandmother's relentless need to be a grandmother and my mother's relentless need to please her and to please the rest of the religion, and my aunt threatening my dad's life if he didn't leave her alone in order to let her carry that baby, which was me. My mom didn't want me. She had me. And then in her damaged, mentally ill space, she neglected me first, and then she abandoned me. My mom put me in a lot of dangerous situations growing up because she wasn't ready to have a baby. She wasn't prepared to have a kid. She didn't want it. She didn't want it. My mother didn't know who she was. She didn't know what she wanted. She didn't know herself. I offer my mother no excuses. No excuses. There was no excuses for the way she put me in harm's way. There are no excuses for the ways that she left me by myself. There are no excuses for the way that she created opportunities for me to be abused and taken advantage of. There are no excuses for the way she abandoned me and left me in the hands of my very abusive father, especially when she knew how abusive he was. There was no excuses for her never coming to get me. Even when I was 17 and I ran from my dad's house the first time because I was convinced that was the moment he was going to take my life. And it was. Even when I left and I ran and I called her and I said, please send for me. I'll work. I'll drop out of school. I can't be with my dad. He doesn't love me and he hurts me. She heard me on the phone and she, knowing who my father was, she literally told me to be better, to go back home. She couldn't take care of me. She had nothing for me. I offer her no excuses. But in all the healing work I have done, I can say that I understand. And the only reason why I've been able to successfully break the cycles in my family is because I understand. Everything that happened to me was not my fault. The adults in my life let me down. But I'm in a place in my healing where I can understand how they got here. And it's important for me to understand how they got here. We're not gonna break these cycles unless we understand. We're not gonna stop the abuse from happening unless we understand. I am not offering any excuses to any of these abusive Black mothers. If you were abused or neglected by your mother and she was a Black woman, I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you. that shouldn't have happened to us. You were so precious. But I need you to understand how much pain, how much danger an animal, and at our core we are animals, how much pain and how much danger an animal feels and how much sickness there has got to be going on in order for them to abuse, intentionally mistreat their baby. We aren't built to birth something and abuse it. We're not built for that. We're not built for that. But we are made into that. I offer these mothers no excuses, but I do see how that type of mother is made and created. I see. I offer my mother no excuses, but I can tell you this. My mom was abused by her mother. My grandmother is not there emotionally. My grandmother is a harsh person. And all my life, she's been a harsh person. And I know I got the calm versions of her. My mom had no support around her mental health, and she had no support when it came to my dad. She had my aunt, well, she had very little support. I make no excuses for my mom, but I understand. I see her story. And because I'm able to see her story, because I'm able to see my father's story, I can do things differently. And I have done things differently. I understand how my dad became abusive. I understand how my mom became abusive. And the only way for me to truly not become like them in that way is to understand the how of how they got there. This is why I'm bringing up this conversation. This is why I'm sharing my story. And this is why this will be a series on my page. No excuses to these mothers, but it's not as black and white as what it has been presented by the situational therapist on TikTok and by other people. This conversation requires nuance. When women are forced, when black women in particular are forced into motherhood, it triggers a post-traumatic slavery syndrome response. We literally have the memory of being forced into motherhood inside of our bones, inside of our veins, inside of our blood. It lives there. The memory of being bred like chattel, the memory of having these babies, and whether you wanted them or not, knowing that they were taken from you, or they can just be snatched from you. Black women who are children of and descendants of the formerly enslaved and colonized, we have a lot of wounding when it comes to our womb and when it comes to our children. There is literally in our recent history the legacy of not having control of our bodies. On top of all the modern things we deal with, when we are forced into motherhood, it will trigger that part of us. I offer no one who is abusive any excuses. I came to offer healing. I came to offer understanding. I came to offer clarity. And I came to offer nuance. I want us to break the cycle permanently and forever. But we can't do this without knowing where it came from. So how do we break the cycle? How do we break the cycle of black abusive mothers? The answer is so simple and so complex. Love black women. Love us. Love us actively. Offer us proper support in the mental health realm, in the physical realm, spiritual, and the mental realm. Provide us with tools to deal with wanted and unwanted pregnancies. Stop forcing these concepts from colonizer organized religion that dictate that women are nothing but baby-making machines. Teach young Black girls that they do not need to be abused and they are allowed to walk away. Teach your boys to take care of Black women and girls. Did you know that one of the highest femicide, I think that's what you call it, rates in America is Black women dying at the hands of Black men? Look it up. When it comes to domestic violence, Black women are abused by Black men at a higher rate than most other races. When it comes to domestic violence, Black women call the cops on Black men the least of other races. When we look at the rate of women being killed by their spouses, especially after they have babies, it's Black women. It's Black women. It's Black women. Who has the highest maternal rate in this country, maternal death rate in America? Black women. Who is some of the most underserved? Not in America, but across the board. Black women. Love Black women. Support Black women. Heal Black women. Or give us our land, time and space, move out of our way, and we can and we will do it ourselves. All right, y'all. Let's take a deep breath in. Push it out. Let's take a deep breath in. Push it out. One more deep breath in. And push it out. This was a heavy subject. It was a really heavy subject, and I'm glad to be able to present it. If you made it to the end of this video, gold star for you. Thank you for sitting through this very heavy subject. It has taken me a while to make this video. I feel very grateful that I'm able to be a channel and a conduit for this message. I've already given you all your instructions. You know how to weigh in the comments. If I see or detect a white person who is speaking directly to our issue, your comment will be deleted. If I see a non-Black person speaking directly to our issue, your comment will be deleted. You can speak to your issue. Under that original video that I posted on TikTok, there's a few Native American brethren and sistren who are weighing in on this, and they're weighing in on it from their perspective. I've had many Native, Indigenous, First Nations women hit me up in my DMs and speak to that this is their reality too, being formerly, some Native people were enslaved, but even just formerly colonized, having their land stolen, being mistreated by the colonizer. There's a lot of them who can relate to this. So again, if you relate to it and you're not Black, speak to your experience and your perspective under these comments, okay? And don't engage Black people unless you're a Black person. This is already really, really a lot. So please don't engage the Black people who are commenting under this video for trauma porn. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Black people under these comments, get into it. Let's have the discussion. Share it on your pages, get into it. Please, respect. Respect each other. We're gonna come from different perspectives. Some of you are gonna be very triggered. So I'm gonna invite you to sit on your comment if you're super triggered. Wait, feel it out inside of you, okay? Do whatever healing you need to do and then leave your comment. All right? All right. Like I said, this will be a series. This video, I wanted to really explain the situation. I wanted to explain where I'm coming from. I wanted to establish some vocabulary. That's what I wanted to do, and give this series a foundation. I have no idea what I'm going to call this series. And again, I have no idea how regularly I'm going to post the videos in this series. Just know that I'm going to do it. And because it's important for us to dissect it, to look at it, to see it, to take it apart so that we can put ourselves back together in a better fashion. Okay? Okay. And on that note, I'm going to let you guys go. Just in case no one has told you today, you are beautiful and you matter here. Thank you for everything you are. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for surviving everything you have survived. Thank you. And thank you for your support. If you like what I'm doing, if you like what you see, if you're feeling this, and if you're feeling me, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. And hit that notifications bell. And on that note, I'll see you, God willing, in the next video.